All right, hello everybody, and good evening or good morning whenever you are watching this. We are the Central 2 group, and we're presenting our behavior change replication project. And our topic is on increasing physical activity through self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback. And in this presentation today, we have Patricia Bogle, Wendy Stywald, David Walquist, and Kirsty Riggins. And so we are going to get started for you right now.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Wendy. I'll be talking about the original study that we replicated. The study itself is called Increasing Physical Activity Through Self-Monitoring, Goal Setting, and Feedback by Matthew P. Normand, and it was published in 2008. The purpose of the current study was to evaluate whether a package intervention similar to another study by Van Warmer in 2004 could increase the number of daily steps taken, suggesting it could prevent adult weight gain. The package intervention included self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback. The participants in the study included 4 adults, 3 were males and 1 was female. That participated in the study. All participants were healthy, non-obese adults who reported that they exercised regularly or semi-regularly, but wanted to increase their daily activity level. Ages ranged from 39 to 59. One participant withdrew from the study after 50 days, but was able to complete 31 days of intervention before doing so. The experimental design is a multiple baseline and AB-AB reversal design. The materials used in the study was a new Lifestyles 2000 pedometer to record each participant's steps. And in the study, they operationally defined a step as any activity that resulted in a count being recorded and displayed on the pedometer. So baseline, to ensure that participants did not receive formal activity feedback during the baseline, the pedometers were masked. So once per week, the experimenter met with each participant individually and recorded their daily totals using the pedometer's 7-day memory feature. Baseline ranged from 10 to 22 days for the participants, reflecting a staggered introduction to intervention for each participant since it is a multiple baseline design. A return to baseline was kept pretty brief to minimize the likelihood of reversing any health improvements that might have accrued. And about the intervention procedures themselves, the daily step goals were established by calculating the average number of steps taken per day during the previous week and setting the new goal at that daily average, so long as that participant had met their daily goal on at least 4 occasions during that week. If they had not consistently met their goal, the goal was not increased. Participants wore their pedometers unmasked and reported their daily step totals once per day to the experimenter via email. In response to each email, the experimenter provided a brief written statement praising goal attainment, such as "good job, keep it up," or encouraging continued effort if the performance failed to meet that goal, such as "give it a little more effort, you can do it." Participants also received vocal, verbal, and graphic feedback from the experimenter each week during a face-to-face meeting. Vocal verbal feedback consisted of the experimenter commenting on the direction of the data points, providing praise for increasing physical activity that week, or providing encouragement to increase the physical activity during the following week. Graphic feedback consisted of a single time series graph depicting the participants' performance to date, including goal lines for the new step goal, as well as for the most recent step goal. And then results. Overall, the daily step totals for each participant increased following introduction of the self-monitoring and feedback intervention, and then they decreased when the intervention was removed and increased again when the intervention was again provided. All of the participants maintained their weight throughout the course of the study, and due to the brief duration and experimental arrangement, it prevented any reasonable conclusion as to actual preventative effects of the intervention for weight gain.
All right. The purpose of our project was to replicate the study that Wendy just went over, that Normand did. And it was to use a treatment package similar to what he used, which was the self-monitoring, the feedback, and the goal setting. We were to determine whether it could increase the number of steps taken relative to suggestions for preventing adult weight gain. The behavior that we were looking at was our daily step count, and that was defined as any activity that resulted in a count being recorded on our pedometer. The importance of this project. What does the literature tell us about setting personal goals, providing feedback, and self-monitoring when wanting to increase physical activity and decrease weight gain? O'Hara et al. 2017 states that goal setting is well accepted as a cornerstone of behavior change interventions. Hayes and Kemp 2015 showed that an intervention package of reinforcement, self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback was effective in increasing school children's steps during recess. The children who participated also had an increase in their MVPA, which is moderate to vigorous physical activity levels. Todd, Reed, and Butler-Kisber 2010 states that self-regulation interventions such as self-monitoring, goal setting, and self-reinforcement can increase self-efficacy among children with special needs. This intervention also was successful in engaging 3 individuals with autism in a 30-minute cycling program. Sawchuk et al. 2011 stated that previous studies with pedometers have found that diary keeping and step count goal setting are influential factors in increasing physical activity. And also an important fact to remember is that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention 2010 recommend that individuals engage in at least 30 minutes of physical activity for most days. And that was stated in the article we found by WAC et al. Materials to use for the project replication. We decided to use a RealAlt 3D Trisport Walking 3D pedometer because it had one of the most highly reliability functions. We also used a computer to keep track of our data and input it, and also to hold our weekly meetings that we had where we discussed the progress of the project. We also used our cell phones to take our pictures of our pedometers and to communicate what our daily step goal was.
So the methods of replication on our end, during the baseline phase, we each wore a pedometer every day for 12 consecutive hours. And the initial baseline range was from 7 to 15 days for each participant. The return to baseline, we kept it pretty short. We kept it at 3 days so we could just get back to the intervention. And each participant averaged their initial baseline step data to collect the first week of their intervention daily step goal. So if your baseline amount of steps per day was 3,000, based off that average, we would set a goal for 3,500 or a little bit above that. And then each week's daily step goal was determined based on the average of the previous week's step data. And during the intervention phase, each individual wore their pedometer for a consecutive 12 hours a day. A day was defined as a 24-hour period, and at the end of each day, the participant would text the group the amount of steps taken that day and input their count into the Google Drive Excel sheet and share that with the group. At the end of each participant's 7-day week intervention, a picture was taken weekly of the pedometer, and the following week's daily step goal was set based off the previous week's average number of steps. So continuing in the intervention phase, the first intervention phase was 14 days for each group member, and the second intervention phase phase varied from each participant. That was ranging from 21 to 30 days, depending on the member of the group. If the individual met their goal, the group would reinforce with praise. And if the individual did not meet their goal, the group would encourage them to continue to work and try to meet their goal. Weekly vocal and verbal feedback was provided via video chat on Google Hangout. And during vocal and verbal feedback, the weekly graph depicting each participant's performance was shared. The group member must have met their daily step goal. If they did not meet their daily step goal for 2 consecutive days, their step goal remains the same for the following week. In total, our replication of this study lasted for 54 days.
All right, the next thing is treatment fidelity of the project. Treatment fidelity was established by each participant taking a picture of their weekly total steps using the 7-day memory feature on our pedometer. As you can see, I took a picture of one of my weekly step goals and added on this slide so you guys can see that. And so that was one way that we made sure that we were holding true to the project. Another way was that we'd ask ourselves at the end of each day, did I input my step count into our Google Drive Excel sheet? Did I make sure my pedometer was set to only track 12 hours a day? And did I text my group members my steps for that day? The next thing is the inter-observer agreement was established by reliability measures were conducted for the daily self-monitoring and daily email feedback components of the project. We used the formula number of days participant did not report daily step divided by the total number of intervention days times 100. So I was sick 2 out of the 54 days of the project. So my formula would be 2 divided by 54 times 100, which would give me a 4%. Inter-observer agreement scores were calculated by participant recording his or her total daily step and then sending picture of pedometer via text to another participant for the inter-observer agreement. As you can see by the example, the participant would have her or his records of 8,184 daily steps. Then that person would take a picture of the pedometer and send that to another group member. And then we would calculate our formula for inter-observer agreement by total days of study, total agreements divided by total days of study times 100. So for example, we had 50 agreements divided by 54 times 100 gives us 93% agreement. And anything above 80% was considered good.
All right, so I'm going to talk about my results. My weekly step goals remain the same all throughout the 54 days of the study. My steps per day throughout these 54 days was 4,944. That was my step goal. I just consistently could not meet the criteria to increase my weekly step goals. My variability in steps were due to days pedometer wasn't worn, such as be in a rush to get to work, and then I'd forget, leave the pedometer at home on my coffee table, and there goes all day without wearing my pedometer, so I couldn't take data. Illness or traveling when I forgot to pack it, so there's about 5 days of zero data because I left my pedometer at home when I traveled out of state. And then the step average overall decreased when comparing my first baseline average to the second phase of intervention average. And as you can see, it's 4,944 versus 4,035. So it did decrease. And then the range was significantly more variable in the second intervention versus the first baseline, ranging from 0 to 16,239 versus 3,027 to 6,211. Had our criteria been different, I maybe could have increased step goals because our criteria was that if we missed or did not meet the step goal for 2 consecutive days, the step goal remained the same. There were days where I would come really, really close to meeting my step goal and then just, obviously couldn't meet the 49.44 for whatever reason. And then my step goal would remain the same for the following week. But ultimately, motivation was key for determining success. I think, I just wasn't motivated enough to continually meet my step goals. And actually having to report my daily steps to the group was more aversive for me. So I think that may have contributed or been a factor to that, but that wasn't the case for everyone. So here is my data collection, how I collected my data, and then the averages for baseline 1 and 2 and intervention 1 and 2. And as you can see, there's variability. So here's my graph depicting all that data. It's kind of all over the place. Where you see a lot of the zeros are the days, those 5 zeros in a row, I was traveling. That's when I left my pedometer at home. And then there was one day where I had over 16,000 steps, but so it's kind of all over the place. But like I said, that wasn't the case for everyone.
I'm going to discuss my results now. I would consistently have at least 3 days per week that I was unable to meet my goals due to forgetting to put it on or things getting in the way where I wasn't able to meet the goal. My weekly step goal remained the same at 7,118 for the 54-day study. Inconsistency in my steps was due to travel or failing to wear my pedometer. My step goal overall decreased from baseline 1 to intervention 2. My average was 7,718 versus 4,367. The range of baseline 1 versus intervention 2 was vastly different, from 4,535 to 11,325 versus 0 to 7,214. If the study was replicated during another time of year, I think that my results would have been better if it was warmer most days. My graph and my data with my baseline average and my intervention range and average for the days of the study. And you can see it's kind of all over the place. Here's my graph. And my graph was all over the place. There are a few days where I logged 0 steps because I did not wear my pedometer, whether I forgot it at home or I forgot it in. There were a couple of days where I forgot it in my car or I thought I lost it. And so that's where the variability comes from. And then the inconsistency in the step goal count.
All right, so I'm going to talk about my results. I was able to increase my daily step goal on intervention 2, but during intervention 1, I was unsuccessful in being able to increase that daily step goal average. The daily step goal for the first intervention phase was 6,962, and it remained this for the whole entire phase. The daily step goal for the second phase of intervention was set at 4,801, and this was increased to 8,808. I think the problem that I came across when doing this study and participating in it was, since I'm a school teacher, during Monday through Friday, I get close to 8,000, 12,000 steps. But then on the weekends, when I'm having to do homework and it's more like stay at home, my steps would take a drastically slummet downhill. So that would affect my daily step goal because it had to be 2 consecutive days. So as you can see in baseline 1 and baseline 2, averages remained fairly the same at 7,549 and 7,064. There was an increase in range and average in the second phase of intervention compared to the first phase. Intervention 1 phase daily step average was 5,925, and the second intervention phase, the average increased to 7,427. So there was a little difference between the first intervention and the second phase of intervention for me. As you can see in the next slide, it just shows my baseline and my intervention averages and range. My baseline average was 7,549 in the original baseline, and then the return was 7,064. My range for baseline was 2,141 to 11,607. And then for the baseline 2 range, it was 3,867 through 9,822. And then you can see the intervention 1 averages and range compared to the intervention 2 averages and range. As you can see in my graph, there's just kind of all over the place. I have my high steps, and then Saturday and Sunday come, and then it slummets back down. And then there were those 2 days that I was sick and didn't wear the pedometer.
All right, and finally, I'm going to discuss my results. So based on the average of baseline, the weekly step goal originally was set at 3,800. And I was able to increase my step goals 3 other times. The first one was 6,600, the second one 7,600, and the third one 8,100. I was able to meet my goal every day except for day 42 when my goal was 8,100, and I took 7,357 steps that day. And the average of steps taken per day increased each time the goal was also increased. And the average number of steps during baseline starting out was 3,261. So I was able to increase that to where my goal was 8,100. And the average number of steps for my last week of the intervention was 8,530. And so here is just all the raw data and the breakdown of what it's showing. So in baseline 1, I averaged, the average was 3,261, and it ranged from 1,805 to 4,526. And then during the second baseline, average was pretty similar, where it was 3,995, and it ranged from 3,380 to 5,387. And during the first intervention phase, I averaged 6,784, and during the second intervention phase, I averaged 8,502. And here's the graph depicting that. So as you can see in the original baseline, it stayed relatively low. And at the introduction of the treatment package, it slowly started to increase. And then the reintroduction of baseline, it decreased again. Excuse me. And the introduction of the treatment package again, it returned back to its previous levels at the first intervention and maintained at that level.
I'm going to discuss the limitations of the project. The sample size was one limitation. A larger sample size would have shown more significant results. The pedometer choice, a different pedometer may have decreased the incidences of forgetfulness for some of the participants. A device that was more easily wearable versus the one that was chosen. Motivation was another limiting factor. If something other than verbal feedback was offered, the overall results may have been different for the participants that were unable to consistently meet their step goal. The time of the year was another limitation. If the weather could have been a distraction on people getting out more to increase their step count, and school as well. If you're more sedentary doing your schoolwork, that also can decrease your step counts. Or if you work Monday through Friday and you're not as active on the weekend, that also decreases your step count. And also the monitor was only worn 12 hours out of a 24-hour period. And so everybody's 12-hour time was variable when they wore it to when that 12-hour mark ended. And some of the conclusions of our project were 2 of the 4 participants showed an increase in effectiveness of step goal intervention. David and Patricia consistently increased their step goals, while Wendy and Christy did not. A weekly step goal may have been more beneficial for the participants that failed to meet their daily step goals. The use of verbal feedback as a reward or motivation was beneficial for some participants and not others. A different reward may have been more beneficial. Weight maintained throughout the study. Every participant maintained their weight throughout the study. And so lack of weight loss showed that it was not enough evidence to link physical activity and weight loss during the study.
And going back to the limitations of the project, I know there was things that were a little simpler for me because I don't have to worry about things like not having pockets and stuff like that. And so the pedometer choice, it was either clip on or throw into your pocket. And I think ultimately it was made based off the reviews, the reliability, and also price came into a factor of all 4 of us having the same exact device. I think a more functional wearable device such as an iPhone, an Apple Watch, or
Fitbit.
There you go, Fitbit. If it was a Fitbit, something you wear around your wrist, I think it would have been a little more practical, and that would have helped with some of the limitations of not remembering to grab it, or depending on what you're wearing to work that day, of it being a functional thing to have with you. That really came into play throughout the study. And I know time of year, it benefited me also because I'm living in Houston and it's ranging from 85 to 60 degrees. So it's a lot easier for me to get out, take the dog for a walk, go on a walk with the family, as opposed to everyone else living in colder climates that they're not going to want to get outside of the house as much. But I know those were 2 main factors, I think, that contributed to me being able to be successful in the study, were just I could throw it in my pocket, and we got nice weather right now, and I can get out and move around with everybody easily. And also, one of the other limitations that was mentioned, the 12 hours versus 24-hour period. I know I tried to pretty consistently throw it in my pocket at 7 a.m., but for most of us, our day does not start at 7 a.m. and then end at 7 p.m. And so I don't think it was necessarily a true representation of the amount of steps that I took in a 24-hour period. So if we did expand the time that we were actually wearing the pedometer, I think that would have helped capture the actual steps taken, because I don't think any of us were able to start walking at 7 a.m. and then at 7 p.m. stop walking and then end our day. Did anybody else have any other practical limitations that they faced during the project?
No.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is Wendy speaking. I live in the Chicago area, and like you said, the time of year was a big factor going into this. You know, it's lower than 20 degrees right now. I don't want to be outside, and I'm less likely to walk my dogs, although I should be. But I think had we, done this in the summertime, there might have been a difference in step data for myself, at least. And then again, with only wearing it for a 12-hour period, I think for myself personally that would have reflected a different data set for steps had we worn the pedometers for longer periods of time. But I know we originally chose the 12 hours due to everyone having completely different work schedules. Some people worked, overnight shifts, so it was really hard to define that 24-hour period, tracking your steps. So I think that's why we originally stuck with the 12-hour limitation. But yeah, those factors, I think if those had changed, I might have seen different results.
I would just like to speak right quick on two things of the limitations. The time of day I found to be a big concern with me. Time of the year. A big concern for me because of the job that I have, and it's all day active Monday through Friday, and then on the weekend it's different. So I think I would have gotten a different result in the summer. And then as for the pedometer choice, I think if that would have been different, it would have been a lot easier for me too, because a lot of times I would clip it on because I don't always have pockets. So I would clip it onto my pants, and then sometimes it would fall off. Luckily, my students would tell me, oh, hey, here's your pedometer, so I could put it back on. But I found that to be an issue too.
Yeah, to go with that, Patricia, now that I'm thinking about, there were a few times where I'd be assisting one of my clients during a behavior, and I didn't realize that my pedometer fell off until hours later, and there's steps lost. So yeah, you do bring up a good point about that.
All right, and lastly, we have all the references used in this presentation. And I think overall the study was pretty effective. I think we ran into some of those issues that we just discussed, but I think overall it was effective in increasing the amount of steps or maintaining the amount of steps throughout the project. All right, thank you for watching, and that was our presentation.